Welcome to the Co-working Values Podcast. I'm Emily Breeder. If you're a community manager struggling with reaching your audience, our latest offering is designed for you. In this 3-month cohort, we will help you build your community, learn practical strategies, and stay motivated with personalized guidance. Join us to transform your workflow and strengthen your community management skills. Look in the description of this podcast for more information on how to sign up.
Hello, folks, and welcome to this edition of the Co-working Values podcast. I will work on a better intro, but I'm mega excited to get into this podcast because it's not about co-working. There is a bit of community in it, but it's all about money and trauma, which I know will either make you hang up now or continue listening. And in my luxury Vigo studio today, I've got Jaskiran. What are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me here. Really excited to have this chat. So I'm a trauma-sensitive financial resilience and well-being expert, I guess. I'm a trauma of money facilitator, and I really look into how cultures and our identity, as well as, what's happened to us in life, how we've been brought up, the work we do and the environments we find ourselves in play a role in how we interact with money and how we earn money, spend it, invest it, and save it.
There's so we're going to put a link in the show notes to your Substack where you write a lot of long form content, and everyone should be on Substack nowadays, which is where our podcast is. So we'll link to that in the show notes. And there's where to begin? So there's this, like, I feel it myself. There's this like weight of money trauma, and we were talking about what we're going to do on this podcast, which is where a lot of these questions come from. Money isn't just about numbers for a lot of people, and there is all this like messy vortex of fear and shame and messy stuff. And the people I've spent the most time with are obviously in co-working spaces, folks, but they're freelancers, creators, small business owners, and a lot of the people I've got to know through co-working are from marginalised communities, and they struggle to even talk about money, and they sweep it under the rug and never can face their money issues and stuff like that. So can you say, that was a very long question, sorry, but can you say a bit about that? Like,
Yeah.
why do we act like that?
Well, I mean, for everyone, it's quite different. So I will start with saying, our relationship to money, and how we kind of view it is set by the age of 7, along with a lot of our other developmental behaviors. And so by age 7, you kind of have an idea of how you feel about money or what role money plays in your life. And of course, by age 7, we've never actually earned money, but it's, that kind of comes from the way we've been raised, who we've been raised by, how they experience money. That could be something, the difference between never hearing about money in the house because maybe you had it, or, always hearing that we're broke, or we just don't have it, or, not being able to go on the school trips, or, feeling kind of like you didn't have as much as other people had growing up. And that stays with us. So that's what can really lead to that kind of scarcity mindset. And, on the flip side of it, you could have an abundance mindset because you never really went without, and you were never really exposed to the value of money and its role in our life as a resource, because that is all money is. It is in fact a resource. But the fact that people don't speak about money is, 62% of the population won't speak about money. I can't remember the exact stat. Somewhere it's like 30 something percent of people would rather talk to their parents about sex than have a conversation with anyone about money. And so if you look at those things and the shame and taboo that we have around these topics around money, they're not necessarily about the resource itself, the actual hard cash. A lot of the time it's around how we feel about ourselves and money, and how we relate to what that means for us. And so there's this ideology, I don't know if it's an ideology, but around like money scripts. And we've all probably experienced at least one of these at some point in our lives. Maybe we flip between them. And those are things like money worship, or money status, or that feeling of so money status, for example, is self-worth, is net worth, or my net worth is my self-worth. And you don't need to be poor to have that. And you could be poor, you could be rich, you could kind of be middle class. But if you have a feeling that my value is intrinsically linked to the amount of money I have in my bank account, the size of my house, whether I have bought a property, do I have a nice car, it makes it really, really difficult to have conversations about money, because you'll feel quite personally attached to that conversation. You know, it would almost be like somebody insulting your appearance, or the way you look, or the choices you've made, or the person you've married. It's as personal as that. And so those can be some of the things that stop us or make us feel uncomfortable talking about money. And then we just have this wider embarrassment and shame around money in society, because I don't know where it started. I've only been on the planet just over 3 decades, but this feeling of you have to kind of be doing as well as or better than your neighbor, you know, the person next to you, the people at school, the people at university.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
There is a keeping up with the Joneses, but there's an embarrassment to be able to say that I can't. And you know, we all feel that. You know, if one of our friends maybe earns more than us and suggests that we go to this restaurant that we would never dream of going to, and that meal is going to cost £100, and you know you've never paid more than £25 out for a meal, there's a discomfort there, because you have this relationship that isn't actually based on money with this person, and now you need to either have this conversation or you don't have this conversation. You let it slide, you go to the dinner, and then you resent them for how much money you spent at that dinner. Um, it shows up in every kind of bit of our interactions with our families, with our friends, with ourselves.
Do you know the book Status Anxiety?
No, I
Right,
don't think.
which is, it's really old now,
Okay.
but in it they say Alain de Botton. He researched all this. He's a philosopher, and so if I was sitting next to you and saw you had an iPhone 16 and I had an iPhone 13, I would get like insanely worried. But then if Richard Branson showed up with an iPhone 20, I wouldn't mind it, because I'm like, we're always, he suggests we're always comparing ourselves and our status with people near us, and it just
Mhm.
tortures us more. Does that make, is that something you agree with? Because I'm just shouting things out now. Sorry, but
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely there is an aspect of that. Maybe not for everybody, of course. We can't make generalizing like statements, but you know, a very well-known phrase is comparison is the thief of joy, and it's not well known for no reason. We are inherently like we are. It's in our nature to compare ourselves. In our nature to look left and right and try and figure out where you fall in, you know, in the hierarchy, or in terms of status. And it's, I mean, that's how we've kind of built society up, right? Like we have class systems, we have systems that have been built through like systems of oppression, basically, through a lot of wealth. A lot of people who are super wealthy are wealthy because they owned other human beings. And if we actually look at how that's impacted where we are today as society, of course we're going to be looking around and comparing ourselves, because, you know, now the poorest people are richer than anybody who was around maybe 100 years ago, right? And 100 years is not a long time when you actually look at the history of the human race. And so we feel like, okay, cool, I can have a smartphone and do everything from this one device, but I can't afford to pay for my heating this winter, or I'll be eating pot noodles if I'm going to put my heating on. And that's not a normal state to be in. And so, yeah, I guess we're always going to be comparing ourselves, and it's easier to compare ourselves now, because not only are we looking at our neighbors on either side of our home, or in our classroom, or in our university class, we're looking at millions of people on social media, and we're able to very easily look at, you know, a snippet of somebody else's life and say, why don't I have that, without really having a full context of how and why they have that, you know. And I often say this about I'm a travel addict. So I love to travel. I've always been a backpacker. I travel really cheaply. And people are like, you've seen so much of the world. Like, people do say to me, you must have so much money. And I'm like, guys, I stay in hostels that cost like $5 a night. Like I share a room with 24 other people if I have to and share a bathroom. And you see people who are like 24, 25 years old going on these extravagant looking trips and traveling the world in the most, I don't know, luxurious, seemingly luxurious way. What they're not telling you is that they've probably got about 10K of debt for that 1-2 week trip that they went on, because people are taking out debt to go on these trips to maintain this image on social media, or they're then using that to kind of catalyst this influencer career by which they get paid to go on those trips.
It's
And it's
insane.
only very recently that people have started actually saying gifted or ad, so that you know what has been paid for by somebody else.
So with the I could go off on the influencer thing forever now, but the going back to what you said about class is I something that always like floors me is how little of I can't remember what the stat is, but I thought it was going to be like 10%, but it's like 1% of equity is given to marginalized communities. And in in the UK, I'm talking here, and I'm sure it's the same around the world. So, like in the Urban MBA white paper, there's like how little is given to people of color from venture capital, how little is given to women,
Mhm.
and so if I'm, if I'm in that community, how do you, what would you say if I came to you and said, oh, like Jaskiran, I just can't get any funding, it's not fair. What would you say to me? Because that is the reality for so many people I know through Urban MBA, through Color in Tech and other co-working communities. And I got triggered when you said, triggered, that's a bit of not the right thing to say, but when you said about class and access, it's,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a problem. I had my little blip of a, 2.5 year fintech founder journey. I am a woman of color. I did come from a working class background, so I've got the intersectionality lottery there. And yeah, I mean, it's something I heard pretty much all the time because I was also working in the VC space at the same time with a community of VCs. At the same time, I was developing an award for underrepresented founders in science, tech, and engineering, and it's a really infuriating problem, I think, because if you're a founder in that space, you are constantly hearing 2% of VC funding goes to women, 1.8% goes to black or brown founders, 0.0 something percent goes to women of color. And those stats aren't getting better. In fact, this year they've actually gotten worse, and so less money was given to founding teams with a woman on the founding team. And I mean, I think VC funding is a very specific type of funding. And so it really depends on what you're trying to build. If you're trying to build a biotech company or a fintech where you need to pay for tons and tons of legal fees and to get through the regulator, and you're going to need to build a huge tech stack, and you couldn't possibly do it without a lot of capital up front, then yeah, you're going to be in that pool of people looking for VC funding. But I think a lot of people try and have this conversation too early in their journey, and it's definitely what happened to us. I was hearing this all the time, and I was like, we're just trying to get an MVP out there and prove the concept and speak to people and do user testing. And people are talking to me about EIS and SCIS funding and getting angels on board early. And I thought, angels are not going to invest in your business until you've proven the concept, until you've proven there's a need for it, until you've got a wait list. Oftentimes, that takes something like 6 to 12 months to get to that point if you were just starting from scratch. And that's if you're lucky, that's if you've spent a decent amount of time on the business, you've had financial comfort outside of that. Maybe you got to move home and didn't have to worry about rent and bills, or maybe you have a partner who can support you, or maybe you just had a lot of money in savings. Either way, I think when we're looking at that, it's quite important to really think, like, how much does this actually affect me, and how much am I going to let this affect the business I'm building? And then how do I like circumnavigate it? Because there are loads of grants available. There are increasing amounts of grants available for people who are from marginalized communities. We saw last week with Innovate Gate that the founder community is not going to put up with not funding women. as they say they're going to anymore. And just a little bit of context on that, Innovate had a Women in Innovation grant. They had £4 million worth of ring fence funding for female founders. And they were going to award that to 50 female founders, up to 75K each. And they announced that they were actually only awarding 25. And then there was uproar on LinkedIn. So Emma Jarvis, who's the founder of Dear Bump, wrote a LinkedIn post. It went viral, and loads of people complaining. That got to Parliament within 4 days. And Innovate UK have overturned that decision, have apologized, and said that actually they will award the remaining 25 grants, because there were lots of questions around what was going to happen to the other £2 million in funding, and where was that going to go. And I think it was nearly 1,500 women applied. And so are we saying that out of 1,500 women who have applied for this grant, only 25 were good enough to receive a £75,000 grant? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, a venture, that's not a lot of money.
That is not a lot of money.
Like, it's not a lot of money. And so it's a really tough space. I'm not going to sit here and say it's all roses and flowers and you should just keep pushing. It's hard. It's hard mentally. You're at risk of burnout. You are pushing against the grain all the time. It's a continuous uphill battle. And I think one of the truest ways of really getting through it is really assessing, like, how much do you care about solving the problem you're trying to solve? And if you care enough, and then another, 5 or 6 minimum factors are behind you in terms of you have enough resilience, you have enough financial resilience, you have enough emotional, mental resilience to kind of get through those times, you have enough support system around you who are going to hold you up when you are literally falling apart, then you'll make it happen. And you might make it happen through grants, you might make it happen through revenue. A lot more people are choosing to bootstrap now. The only issue here
Can you
is,
say a bit about bootstrapping? Because I think that's the way to go. I think, like, 2012, I was running around London in this ill-fated startup trying to raise finance, and I drank so many glasses of red wine I didn't want with people I don't like. And looking back, and stayed out just all that money chasing thing, which you alluded to this at the beginning of this, but like, seeing how far you can get bootstrapping is what I would recommend people to do. And is that where you would go? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think it's the general piece of advice, really, like, especially maybe in the last 3, 4 years while I've been in this. So I come from a banking background, and when I've moved into kind of the more venture space, I've heard it a lot more from investors who are, now more so saying bootstrapping is a better way. Investors are getting more vocal now, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, and saying those things out loud. I think that there's just, there was venture capital just used to be a bit more of an enigma, and now it just feels a bit more like a marketing game. Like, all VCs, big VCs, seem to have like marketing teams, and they're trying to pull in all these pipelines of founders, and a lot of them are creating these accelerator programs, or like labs, I guess, like venture labs, to get people to come and build an idea from, and then we'll back it. And I don't know. I have mixed feelings on those kind of programs. I think if you're being a founder just because you want to be a founder, you're not in it for the right reasons. I think if you care about a problem, you can bootstrap it, as long as you have, like I said, all those other kind of things in place. And that's why I talk a lot about financial resilience, because you can care so much, and then this will really play on your mental well-being, because you just might not be able to afford to do it. And I'm bootstrapping right now, but I have the luxury of being able to move home to my parents' house and not really worry about there being a roof over my head. But bootstrapping to revenue is definitely a more sustainable model than getting into this cycle of continuous raising funding, because it's not that you raise funding one time and then you're good forever. That funding will run out. You might not have everything you need. You might need to grow and build a bigger team. Your first set of investors might say to you that they want to see bigger growth, which means, what do you need to do? You need to go out and fundraise again. And so you'll be on this cycle of every 1 or 2 years raising funding until the next round and until the next round. And
because you see people go like, we got 10 million, we got £10 million funding. And for, people looking at that £10 million, that's like, 4,000 million MacBook Airs or something. I don't know, but then when you get that, you have to like go again, don't you? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, really depending on the business. If you're building in the, the energy space and solar space, or if you're building in fintech, um, that 10 million won't, I mean, 10 million is a lot of money, a lot of money, but it's only going to go so far, right? Like, you're not looking to employ people for the first year and then sack them, right? Like, you need to be able to keep your employees. Like, your hope is that you're going to employ people and they're going to be with you for a long time. So it's quite difficult. I mean, I know a lot of founders who have been actively fundraising or crowdfunding, and it's a struggle. They kind of go, I don't know, everyone's talking about founder mode right now, right? But they disappear. Um, it's not easy. They're having tough conversations all the time. And don't forget, they're running a business while they're doing it. You're not just fundraising. You've got to keep the lights on in the business. And if you've already had funding in, the likelihood is that business serves customers. So whether it's B2B SaaS or it's B2C product that, everyday people are using, that product can't just turn off because you're like, I need more money. So yeah, I don't
is
know. I think, well, it's not that I don't know. I do know. I think it's just a real case of every business is going to be different. I think if you can bootstrap. Like, there is no reason to be going out there looking for huge amounts of funding with an idea on a piece of paper unless you need labs or tons of equipment or specialized academic hires and people that you're not going to be able to find without paying them a lot of.
that's great advice. As we wrap up a little bit, I
Yeah.
really want to dig into this like emotional traumatic thing. Like, how would you? So, the kind of business ownery, startup-y, people I call independent economic agents. People, whether it's a micro business or they've got a Substack and they're killing it. People who like start their own thing and they have this, and when I say they, I mean me included, like have this emotional baggage around money and all these, like you said earlier, money scripts and stuff. And that just gets in the way of so much. And like, what do you kind of, how do you start to talk to people about like, listen, mate, you need to like unpick your emotional baggage around money and get on with it, which you obviously can't say it like that, but it is a journey.
Sorry, go on.
No,
How?
that's it. That's it. You were. I didn't finish the sentence properly, and you can say what you think now.
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing because I thought, well, it depends on how well you know your mate, and maybe you can say that. I obviously don't say that to people I don't know, but I mean, maybe I can start a little bit with money scripts, and this can help people relate. And that is how I have conversations, to be honest, just like a normal human being, like we're having a conversation now. But really, it's about listening a lot of the time. So I run finance therapy circles, which is a monthly virtual event. It's free. Anybody can come. They join on Zoom. You can put a link in the notes for people who listen to this podcast. And for me, that's about creating a safe space. And I lead with somatic practice because I'm very much around, like all about nervous system regulation when we're talking about things that activate us. And that might be, you might be having a fight with your partner. And I don't know, I'm sure everyone's had a fight with their partner and they say things they don't mean and things get thrown and doors get slammed. And then you go away and you take a couple of minutes and you regret what you did and what you said. And that happens with everything. And that's because we don't have, and that's like a very easy example for people to understand what deregulation looks like. It's that, the quickening of the breath, the not being able to think straight, the getting angry, the feeling out of breath. And that can show up in so many forms. If you suffer from something like anxiety, you might feel that in kind of panic attacks. And what people do in that space is get you to take long, deep breaths and count your breaths and look around at things that you see. And those are all examples of nervous system regulation. And so I just bring that practice into talking about money. So I start a session with a somatic practice where we do a short meditation or a breathing exercise. Maybe we do a visualization. Sometimes I experiment with holding a thought about money and then we actively move through the somatic practice so that people can really feel where those thoughts show up physically in their body. And for me, this is really interesting because it's about helping people connect mind, body, and money. Because, I don't know about you, but I hold my anxiety in my stomach, like a lot of people do.
In my chest, like
Yeah,
it's like someone's punched me in the chest when anxiety happens.
well, it's going to be hard. It must feel like a heart attack. So for me, it feels like I'm about to drop off a roller coaster. And for different people, it'll show up in different places. They'll have tight hips, they'll have knee problems, they'll have really sore necks or like a lump on the back of their neck from the stress, or they hold their shoulders up. And really taking people through an experiential activity where they feel that thing. I might say something like, take a moment to think about your first memory of money or your first negative memory of money. And then I give them that moment, and then I will lead them through some breath work, or then through some meditation. And then afterwards, ask them to reflect on how they feel now versus how they felt at the beginning. Or as you go through that kind of, I don't know, if you do a body scan, you'll realize like, oh, I've taken a moment, I've closed my eyes, I've quieted my mind, and I'm thinking, you realize where you feel it. A lot of people don't take a moment to realize the feelings in their body and the sensations and what they're related to in terms of like what's going on in their mind.
I've
And
done
so
so
that,
many things like that. Sorry to jump
yeah,
in, but I didn't even know that was a thing you could do years ago.
yeah,
And it is, when you first do it, it's a bit weird. Like what it feels like being in a TV comedy sketch. But like that connection that you're talking about is so important. And I would urge people to, come to your circle or go and find someone they know and or get an app or something and do that kind of work, because it is, I'm not overstating it when I say it's like transformational to make some effort to get that in touch with, what would you say? Get that in touch with, I've lost for the word.
I think, it's just getting in touch with your body, like really just reconnecting to the our body, the thing that houses us, right? And for, when I first started meditating, it's been 15 years, I think. And I remember used to do body scans to go to sleep, and I felt like I was high. Like you feel like getting that much oxygen into your body in a quick amount of time, and, paying attention, doing a body scan where somebody's telling you to pay attention to certain parts of your body. I remember feeling tingling in my toes or my fingers, and it was very weird for me. I just thought, wow, I can feel my toes. Like you can't normally feel your toes unless you've hurt them. So it's definitely an experience of realizing that actually we are in more control. And that is, especially with money and with a lot of things to do with kind of anxiety and potentially depression, control is usually a really big factor. We often feel out of control and we're always seeking control. And with money, that's really true too. And then I just wanted to touch upon, just so people can really understand where this potentially relates to, or just, give them the language to be able to talk about money. So I did mention earlier a little bit about money scripts, but the four are kind of money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. And so money avoidance is that feeling of um, money equals greed or corruption. So feeling like I don't deserve money, or feeling guilty for wanting money, or, just avoiding thinking about money at all. And so you might hear people say like, oh, money is icky, or rich people are gross, or they're so greedy and I never want to be like that, or I don't need to earn more money. And that's avoidance. People often think like, oh, I'm actually better than everybody else for thinking this way, and I'm not greedy and I'm selfless. But actually you're harming yourself by not recognizing that money is something you need to be able to live the life that you want, not because money is the goal, but because money is the resource that gets you to the life that you want to live. And then money worship is quite the opposite, where it's feeling like money is freedom and happiness. And, you get fulfillment from maybe buying things, or you potentially overspend, or you make riskier decisions with your money. Um, Maybe you work too much, you might be a workaholic because, the end goal is money and work is for money, right? And then the other two, so money status, and I did talk about that before in terms of, net worth being self worth. You might lie about money. You might tell your friends you earn more than you do. You might also be overspending. But underlying that will be this constant feeling of either unhappiness or anxiety because you're always thinking about money. You can't be in a moment. I mean, they'll that's quite general, but you might be in moments where you're thinking about money when you should be, I don't know, spending time with your kids or enjoying the fact that you are all present and you're with your friends and you're all alive and healthy and well. But actually, you might be thinking, oh, he earns more than me, or she earns less than me, or I'm better than that person, based on your self worth and net worth kind of relationship. And then the last one being money vigilance. So, that's the kind of thought about money should be saved, not wanting to spend, thinking that handing money out is bad, or maybe avoiding using credit cards and thinking that having credit is a bad thing, and having a lot of anxiety over money. So, constantly worrying about how much is in your bank account and how much you have to spend if you can afford your bills or your heating, or if you go out today, you're not going to be able to go out for the next 3 months. Those kind of thoughts that people have, or, my friends have invited me out, but I'm a little bit low on money, so I'm just not going to go at all. And then people start to isolate because of their relationship to money and their fear around money and this anxiety of, no, 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 I need to stay safe and I need to make sure I have enough. And then people kind of start to withdraw from their friendship groups and they start to lose those friendships. And it's got nothing to do with the friendship, it's got to do with how they feel about money and their place in how they can kind of contribute to those friendships.
These, I think it's really important to. It certainly helped me, like visiting all those things at some stage and having conversations about them. And this has come up a lot in when we've done like freelancer groups in co-working.
Mm-hmm.
Someone just ever since like 2010, people were sitting around going, oh, like they'll be at a desk and go, oh, this client, and then someone will say either like, they're paying me £100 a day, and it's really good money, and someone will go and getting paid 10 grand a day, and then everyone starts. It leads into how people value themselves. I'm
Mm-hmm.
exaggerating for effect there with those numbers, but how people value themselves, what they expect. There's one particular. We used to run this monthly get together, which was 10 people. Basically, it was a mastermind called the Creator Club,
Mm-hmm.
and we would meet and just help each other out. And there was one guy in there who was like could build you like the most technically amazing website in 10 seconds, and he was like 19,
Mm-hmm.
and people just paid him hardly ever any money. And as soon as he got in our group, he didn't realize his value. He just thought everyone could make WordPress websites in 8 seconds, and he didn't realize how much money those websites made after he'd made them. I've gone off on a complete different tangent here, sorry, but it's just very healthy to talk about that stuff.
Well, I think
Yeah,
that's a testament to what happens actually when you talk about money, because we do end up in so many tangents because it's rarely ever about money. It's usually about something else. And you talk about freelancers there. I think I wrote a post which went live today around suicide.
suicide.
Yeah, around Suicide Prevention Day and suicide and how we how we relate to money and how that can put us at risk of suicidal ideation and thoughts. And there is a small paragraph in there about, freelancers. So there's a whole section I talk about work. And actually, people who freelance or sole traders, there's this really interesting thing that people often complain about is, economic coercion and this feeling of, okay, I'm a freelancer or I'm a small business and I deliver into, I don't know, ABC company, who's a giant conglomerate, I can't say that word, conglomerate, organization, and they don't treat you well. They don't treat you with respect. They don't respect your invoice timing. They don't realize, and it's not, maybe they're not doing it on purpose, but those processes don't typically fit in with the cash flow needs of a small business. So what ends up happening is that you either don't get paid, you don't get paid on time, they pay you the wrong amount, and all of those are going to lead to what many people feel is an awkward conversation about money, because they're going to have to go and ask for what they were owed. And they're going to feel like, I did this work and you didn't value it. Or maybe they paid me wrong because I did it wrong. Or maybe my work wasn't good enough and so they've paid me less. Or maybe the person at ABC organization doesn't like me or has forgotten about me. And then those lead to feelings of anger, resentment, guilt, shame, when actually we just don't have an open line of communication. What's probably happened is that person at ABC company is shit at their job. They haven't sent the invoice on to the right team. The person at the invoice team has been on 2 weeks holiday. It's ended up in the bottom of a pile in a Microsoft inbox. And that's the reality of what's happened, but that's not what's happening in your mind. And in your mind, you've gone a month and your invoice hasn't been paid. And we don't like to talk about money. So what are you doing? You're sitting there stressing about sending that email and then sending up another email and a follow-up and a chaser saying, hey, like, do you remember me? I did this piece of work for you. Or, the people who are relying on these pieces of work that have been promised, and then they get ghosted by that company because it's summer. And that company, most people in the company are now like on their summer holidays. And we rely as freelancers, as small business owners, as sole traders on that income. And so there's just a big mismatch on like how we are earning money in this space and why it's quite difficult for freelancers and why we struggle, because you're constantly chasing the next project or piece of work or paid piece of work. You find community in co-working spaces with other freelancers. And you say you exaggerated those numbers, but if you go on social media right now, everyone's talking about that 10K month, earn your 10K month. And
Oh God.
it's like, this is bullshit marketing. And sorry, I swore on the podcast.
You can say that.
It's really like they are selling a dream, which may not even be true, but it is what everyone believes. Everyone believes they should be having a 10K month now. Other people are talking about 100K months. And they're not talking about the work and the effort it takes to get there. They're not talking about the product that they're actually selling. They're not talking about where that 10K or that 100K comes from. And then you have the everyday freelancer who might work for £100 a day when they're just starting out and don't realize the value of their work, now feeling guilty and ashamed and thinking, oh, well, it must be something about me that people don't like. Why they are not paying me that? Why am I not worth a 10K month, even though I have all these amazing skills? And those are things we just learn by talking about it. And it's the same with, mental health. We only learn these things are normal by talking to other people about them. I've been very frank in that post around suicidal ideation, because if I don't talk about that publicly, other people are going to continue to not feel like they can talk about it publicly.
So what
And
you're saying is the ones that talk about it, they're the ones that make it home.
yeah, I mean, that's what I put at the end of the post, and that's a lyric from a Tom Walker song, who I luckily actually got to see at a festival a few weeks ago, and he's amazing. And he sings a lot about struggles and suicide, and there are a lot of stats out there because men are more likely to actually take their lives, but women are more likely to have suicidal ideation and thoughts. So twice or three times more likely. It's just that men are 3 times more likely to succeed in taking their lives.
Is
And
it,
so these conversations often relate back to social standing and money and financial hardship and, economic disempowerment. And we're not automatically safe from that just because we have money or a job. Sometimes having money and a job is also the factor that causes that.
so I feel there's a part 2 to this coming. I'm going to definitely link to that post in the show notes. And where's the, obviously Substack and the thing, but where are the other best places to connect with you online and find out about your work?
LinkedIn. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You'll find me and my ramblings there every day. So I'm Jaskiran Manga on LinkedIn. Again, we can chuck that in the show notes. And I have a very inactive Instagram where I'll post a story to advertise my finance therapy circles at Money with Jas on Instagram. And then, through those channels, you can always find a way to get in touch with me directly or slide into my LinkedIn DMs. I'm pretty responsive.
And one last thing, thank you for Joyce from Islington Affordable Workplace Scheme for putting us in touch, because I've been looking for this type of conversation for our community for a long time. I think it's really, really important. So I appreciate you. I really appreciate people that bother. I didn't mean it. That sounds nasty. I really appreciate people that make the effort to write as much and share thoughts and work out loud like you are. And you know, I just met, like we said many times in this podcast, so many people like are just stuck with a money conversation for many reasons. So cheers for making the time today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have there's be all the show notes in there. There'll be a link to our London Co-working Assembly events, and there's a link to the 7,000 people in the LinkedIn co-working group. And I speak to some of you offline and say, can you post in the LinkedIn co-working group? And everybody's waiting for everyone to go first. And it's not a place to advertise what you're doing. It's a place to like share what's going on. And maybe I should have some kind of prize for the first person that posts in there. But there's so many great stories, and we'd like them all shared in there, please. And that is it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and attention today. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.
Thank you for having me.